Mule SDK, Java SDK, basic module structure. Here you can see the basic module structure in Java SDK, in Mule SDK. The entry point for building a Mule module is an extension annotated class. This class is used to export all module functionality and all the element associated with it. Warning: this class must be a public and non-abstract class. The extension annotation cannot be used on interfaces, abstract classes, private or protected classes, or type classes with generics. When using extension annotation, you need to provide descriptive and concise name for the module. You should not use extension, module, or connector in the module name. If you do, the SDK will trim them. Optionally, you can specify the attribute vendor and attribute category. Once you have created an empty module, you can start adding elements to it. Here you can see the basic module structure. At the high level, the elements are components, then operations, sources, functions, routers, scopes on the components, and the connection providers, configurations, and parameters. Components are the key to the functionality of a module. Given set of parameters, they can be executed to produce and alter messages in the flow. Sources and operations are most common component in the module. Operations are component that process an incoming message and generate a result. Sources are component that receive and generate new messages to be processed by Mule runtime. Configurations are set of configurable parameters that affect the behavior of the module. Sources and operations typically depending on the configuration for parameters that determine their behavior. However, some can work on their own without a configuration. There's no requirement to declare configuration for a module, but you can declare as many as you need. Different configuration might provide different set of parameters and specify set of operations and sources that are only available when using that configuration. Connection providers. A connection provider is a module element in charge of handling connections which are created from the configuration. They centralize the logic and parameterization to provision and release connection of some specific type. Like configurations, sources and operations, connection providers typically depend on connection in order to be executed. A connection is not required, but it is common. Connections used by operations and sources are provided by connection provider. Connection providers are bound to configurations. Configurations have none, one, or many connection providers that create different types of connections. For example, one connection provider for HTTPS and another for non-secured HTTP connections. Parameters are most granular elements on the module model, and they are used in all these elements: operations, sources, configurations, connection providers. They represent configurable element that accept values for element to execute, or they hold the configured values. Other elements, the module can have other element types, for example routers, scopes, functions or errors. The ones described here are the core element that most modules are likely going to have. Here the operations are one of the most important Mule concept because they represent the actions your module can perform inside the flow. You can use them to process incoming messages through business logic, and that is implemented in the module. Sources, the operation, are components that process the message and generate results. The message sources are components that give received or generate new messages to be processed by the Mule runtime. Functions, database is a main expression language in Mule 4, and Mule SDK is also aligned in that view. This allows you to contribute functions to data view from your module code in a similar fashion that you code your Mule operation. Using custom functions allow you to reuse code in a new way, providing extra functionality in a single module with very little overhead regarding how they declared compared to Mule operation. Routers, conceptually routers are operations that can receive many executable routes and set of parameters that handle the execution of one, all, or none of them. Scopes are similar to operations, but their execution includes the execution of their child operations. This means that the scope is basically an operation that received one or more argument that are simple parameters along with the single chain component and completion callback. Connection providers, connected modules. Connectors are most common types of module. They provide connection between Mule flow and the external resource. Configure these connections with the connection provider in a connectivity framework to create disconnect and describe the connection for Mule runtime engine to handle. Configurations are set of configurable parameters that affect the overall behavior of your module. All modules are required to have at least one configuration, but you can define as many as needed. Parameters are configurable argument that belongs to an given component. Configurations components and connection providers are called configuration components, and connection providers are called parameterizables because they can be configured through their parameters. Here you can see module is connected to configuration and components. Here the component has operations, sources, routers, scopes, and functions. Here the configuration is connected to components and parameters and connection providers. Here components are connected to parameters, and here the connection providers are connected to parameters. Now this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching it.